This is Isaiah chapter 40, starting in verse 12. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens by the span, and calculated the dust of the earth by the measure, and weighed the mountains in a balance and the hills in a pair of scales? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has informed him? With whom did he consult, or who gave him understanding? And who taught him in the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and informed him of the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket, and are regarded as a speck of dust on the scales. Behold, he lifts up the islands like fine dust. Even Lebanon is not enough to burn, nor its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are regarded by him as less than nothing and meaningless. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness will you compare with him? As for the idol, a craftsman casts it, a goldsmith plates it with gold, and a silversmith fashions chains of silver. He who is too impoverished for such an offering selects a tree that does not rot. He seeks out for himself a skillful craftsman to prepare an idol that will not totter. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundation of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He it is who reduces rulers to nothing, who makes the judges of the earth meaningless. Scarcely have they been planted, scarcely have they been sown, scarcely has their stock taken root in the earth, but he merely blows on them and they wither, and the storm carries them away like stubble. To whom then will you liken me, that I would be his equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars, the one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is inscrutable. He gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. The word of the Lord. Our last series, which seems like months ago to me. You remember that last series, don't you? Please say yes. Our last series was on the book of Joshua, and I realized that I got to the end of the book and failed to comment on one particular detail, which has been bugging me. I thought it deserved comment, and I failed to comment on it, and that is the fact that as the book comes to its conclusion, a title is conferred on Joshua, a title of great honor and great respect, a title that was up to then reserved in the Bible only for one man, and that was Moses. And upon Joshua's death, that title is applied to him. By the way, that's how it happens sometimes, only after we die. You know, some of you are living great lives and no one will recognize that until after you die. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. And after Joshua, the general who took the people into the land of their inheritance, the promised land. After he dies, the book of Joshua concludes with these words. And then it came about after these things that Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of Yahweh, died. The servant of Yahweh. That's the formal covenant name of Israel's God. Joshua, the servant of the Lord. You know, as you read through the Hebrew Bible, From time to time, God will refer to men and women as my servant, but that formal title, the servant of Yahweh, the servant of the Lord, is reserved for only 3 people in the whole Hebrew Bible: Moses, Joshua, and David, until we come to the book of Isaiah. And there, at the end of that book, we meet this mysterious character who goes by the name of the servant of Yahweh. And over the next several weeks, as we approach the season of Advent, which starts officially next Sunday, over these next several weeks, we hope to get to meet and get to know this mysterious character, the servant of the Lord. And we hope to meet him, of course, in the famous servant songs in the end of Isaiah's message. Today's passage is famous because it was set to music in a little ditty called Handel's Messiah. You might have heard it. And it's even more famous than that because all 4 gospel writers apply the beginning of this passage to the person and work of John the Baptist. He is the voice crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. And this chapter, Isaiah 40, is often associated with the season of Advent, the season of preparation for the advent or the arrival of God in Jesus Christ. And this chapter tells us how to get ready for it. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. So it's a perfect passage for Advent. This is a passage, as the first words make clear, that is meant to bring comfort to people who are really, really sad. And, over the years, I've recognized from working with you and other people who have been to this church that the holidays often are a time of sadness for a lot of people. They remember losses in their lives. They approach the holiday season knowing that there's going to be an empty seat at the Thanksgiving table and the Christmas table. They recognize their own loneliness. It's accentuated during this time of the year. They get through the holidays, and we have a little collapse after the holidays as the days didn't really meet up to our expectations. And ironically, we feel all the more guilty when we get sad because it's supposed to be a happy time, and what am I doing, bummed out. And so this passage applies to us as we enter the holidays. It's a passage that is meant to bring compassion and comfort to those who are confused and doubting, and those who reach the ultimate doubt of despair. It's a kind of preparation for difficulty that has not yet come. And for us, it's a way to stock up the shelves of our souls so that when discouragement, as we heard last week, or calamity or difficulty comes, when the bottom sort of drops out, this passage gives us an opportunity to prepare for that day now, stocking up the shelves of our souls so that we have all the hope and the inner resources necessary to sort of rise above whatever comes our way. So let's look today at number 1, the calm before the storm. Secondly, the logic of hope. And lastly, the way of waiting. The calm before the storm, the logic of hope, and the way of waiting. In the original setting, this whole section of Isaiah is a preparation, and the prophet is seeing the approach of judgment. If you can think of this whole section, Isaiah 40 to 66, as Isaiah standing up on a mountain, he's looking out through this valley of despair and judgment to a mountain in the distance, a mountain of restoration. God's chosen people have decisively broken covenant with God. It's as if they've sort of submitted their divorce papers against their Father in heaven, against their husband. And they have done that by neglecting the poor. That's a very important theme in Isaiah. The church that neglects the poor and the weak and the needy is a church that has turned away from God. They have done that by joining their pagan neighbors in the worship of idols. They have tried to control the elements by making offerings to idols, and they have even participated in the ultimate offering, giving their own children on pagan altars. And this has persisted. It hasn't only taken place for a couple months or a couple years. It has gone on for multiple generations, and God continues to warn them, but soon the warnings will come to an end. And God will bring upon his own precious jewel of a city, Jerusalem, the armies of Babylon to destroy the city, and just like in the Exodus, to enslave the people, this time not in Egypt, but in Babylon. But as in Egypt, there will also be another mountain in the distance. There will be a new Exodus. And that's why Isaiah starts with comfort. But sadly, the people see themselves as being on top of a mountain. And they have no idea about this valley of judgment and despair that awaits them. And the people don't see any need for comfort and hope because, life is just swell. I heard this illustration years ago by Jack Miller, kind of contextualize it for our own situation. But the Dania Pier? I hope everyone's been to the Dania Pier. If not, run, don't walk to the Dania Pier. It's great. And it's a fishing pier in Dania. It extends out a couple hundred yards. And when you go out on the end of it, it's really in deep water, and it's amazing. And picture yourself on a very stormy, windy day, and you're fishing by yourself at the end of the Dania Pier. No one else on the pier. And suddenly you hear in the distance a sound. You can't quite make out the words, and you scan in vain the ocean to see where the voice is coming from. It's getting a little louder in time, and you're really looking out on the sea to see who's saying that, and you understand the words, I'm coming, I'm coming. Looking out on the ocean, you hear it, and then there's a sound of drums, and you're looking out, but you can't see the person, and then you hear it quite clearly, I'm coming, and you turn around to see someone running down the pier, and he throws a life ring, and it hits you right in the head. And you look at the person, and you're angry and confused. Why would you do that? Now picture the same exact scene with one little alteration. This time you're not on the pier, you're under the pier. And you're wrapped up in your own fishing line, and you're crashing again and again against the pier itself, and you're about to go down for the third time. And then you hear the voice of this crazy man saying, I'm coming, but he no longer sounds like a crazy man. It's the sweetest sound you've ever heard. Isaiah has been telling the people, you think you're on top of the pier, but I'm trying to tell you, you're under the pier. But all they can see just looks fine. And all of these 39 chapters of judgment have failed to convince the people that they're really a great big mess in need of salvation. But all that is going to change very quickly as God sends the empire of Babylon to destroy the city, to destroy the temple, to destroy the walls. Isaiah kept telling them that it was going to come. But they were so sure that God would never destroy his own city. I mean, the people up north in the 10 tribes of Israel, if they got taken into captivity by Assyria, well, that's because they didn't have Jerusalem. But we have Jerusalem, and we have the temple, and God would never destroy his temple, but destroy it he will. And unbeknownst to them, they were living in the calm before the storm. And Isaiah is holding out to them all the provisions they need. Stock up the shelves of your souls now so that when the storm comes, you'll be able to weather the storm. But they keep looking at Isaiah as if he's a crazy man, hurling a life ring at someone who doesn't need to be saved. Now, I realize to whom I'm speaking today as I talk about the calm before the storm. I mean, we people in South Florida, we have a kind of strange relationship with storms, don't we? I remember we had on staff for some 5 years Rick Barnes, who came from another part of the country. And every time in the summertime there was any kind of hint that a storm might be coming, man, out came the laptop, and he was searching all the weather sites, and he was asking everyone in the staff, are we going to close the church? Are we going to cancel church on Sunday? And of course, we have been here a long time, would look at him and kind of laugh. Dude, we don't respond to storms the way the rest of the country does down here. And we all know about that. We can all be a little smug when it comes to storms. Many of us have laughed at people like that, and we've laughed at the television reports that show the long lines in Home Depot and in Publix as people are stocking up. And the reason we laugh is two reasons. One applies to about 3 people in the congregation, and the other applies to the rest of us. About 3 people in the congregation laugh at people who stand in these long lines because they are so well stocked and prepared that they have no fears. They have the submerged generator in their home, and they have everything they need not only to help themselves but to help other people. But for the rest of us, we laugh at them because we think, I've been there, done that. Storms come and storms go, and I'm sure this storm is not going to hit us. But you see, Isaiah is the divinely inspired weatherman. And he doesn't think a storm is coming. He knows a storm is coming. And he is saying, you are going to get hit by this storm, and the more incredulous and smug and self-assured and skeptical you are, the more devastating this storm of judgment is going to be for you. And you see, for us and for you, I'm thinking about you. For you, you may be in a really good and sweet time of your life where everything just seems to be coming up roses and you seem to have the Midas touch. Everything turns to gold. I know the feeling. I've had times like that in my own life. But have you ever realized that you may be living in the calm before the storm? Because, for all of us, eventually, something will come our way that will blow you away. The bottom will drop out and you will lose someone that you love, and you'll find yourself with your head in your hands saying something like, he was so young, I just didn't see it coming. Or you'll be told, your services are no longer needed here. And you'll find yourself in this moment with your psyche no longer reliable. And you'll say things like, I don't know, my mind is just playing tricks on me. You'll lose sleep. And if you really share it with someone else, you'll describe it as being emotionally raw. Like your soul is completely exposed. And it'll happen to everybody. That's why it says in verse 30, though youths grow weary and tired. That is, even the strongest, most vigorous ones among us. Though vigorous men stumble badly. It happens to everyone. And in that moment, you may look around and you may conclude, the truth is, I'm lonely. And I've never said those words before. I've never faced it before. I've been in denial up to now, but the truth is, I'm lonely. And whatever friends I have can't really bring me through this situation. And of course, if none of that happens, you'll still undergo the big one. Because eventually, the big one is coming for you. And I hate to freak you out in this way, but eventually you'll find yourself, as I've said many times before, floating. And you'll think to yourself, where am I? And you'll find yourself looking down on your own lifeless body. And you'll hear the persistent drone of the cardiac monitor, beep. And you realize that I have died and I am about to face judgment. And my message to you is that now is the moment. This is the calm before the storm. And Isaiah is equipping us. He's giving us a mindset, a kind of logic that will sustain you in the storm. And if you learn to employ this new logic now in the calm, then when you see yourself under the pier, you'll be able to buoy yourself and enable you to rise above it all. The prophet puts together a kind of time capsule. It's like on the time capsule it says, in case of storm, open this. Can be used when the bottom drops out. He puts together a way of reasoning within ourselves, an argumentation that takes place in ourselves. He does it by the use of a long string of rhetorical questions. Later on in the day, go through the whole passage that we printed in the bulletin and just circle all the punctuation marks. And what's the dominant punctuation mark? It's the question mark. And they all gather together in the very last paragraphs. He's equipping us with a way of conversing with ourselves. If you've ever heard that healthy people don't talk to themselves, it's just the opposite. And Isaiah is giving us a way to talk to ourselves. We are to look around at the creation. See, it applies to anyone. Anyone who can get outside can do this. Just look around at the creation and simply ask the question, who measured the oceans in the hollow of his hand? And then he says, God said to Abraham, look up. Look out on the ocean and then look up. Count the stars. Can you count them all? Who marked off the heavens by the span and calculated the dust of the mountains with a pair of scales? He says, look at the beauty and order and the complexity of creation. Look at the immensity of the universe. Reflect on the mathematical patterns that you see in creation. This week, a friend of mine turned me on to a website called Cymatics. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. I never did. Cymatics, Cymatics. It's the study of making vibrations visible. And they take a tuning fork with different tuning forks with different notes. They strike the tuning fork, they hold it up to a beaker, and then they film it, the pattern of vibrations in the water. I don't know exactly how they do it. They use a cymoscope, I guess. And each different note makes an amazing pattern in the water that's symmetrical, very complex, and every note is different. We can look it up online, Cymatics. Tell them TJ sent you. But look at that and then ask yourself, in the midst of this astounding mystery and magnificence, simply ask, is this order accidental? I mean, is this very evident design not the product of an intelligence infinitely beyond us? Is there not a grand designer who is himself the great source of all truth, beauty, and goodness? And then realize it is he who made us, not the other way around. And understand that all the forces we so much dread, like asteroids and armies and microorganisms and massive oceans and hurricanes, they're all under his control. None of them control him. He controls them. Nothing moves him. Nothing influences him. The nations are like a speck of dust to him. If all of our citizens got together and voted against him, it would not move him in the least. It would be nothing to him. He never gets tired. He never doesn't have all the information. He's never in need of our advice. His understanding is inscrutable. The idols are dumb. They're only projections of our own desire to control our lives and control the elements. But he is the infinite, eternal, and unchangeable source of light and life. And this unmoved mover whom Isaiah saw in the temple at the start of the prophecy, remember? The train of his robe filled the temple. And he declared when he saw him, "Holy, holy, holy." The everlasting God is also committed to his people. He loves us. And he is good. And he holds out resources. He gives strength to the weary. He's there to help those who need help. And we all need help. If not now, then soon and very soon. Even youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous men stumble badly. And do you see that from our perspective, 2018, with all that we've seen that Isaiah didn't see, do you see that our logic of hope is even more developed than Isaiah's? Because we have seen the Lord who sits above the vault of the earth. Isn't that interesting? That says the circle of the earth in the pre-scientific Bible. It's interesting. Do you see that we have seen the Lord who sits above the vault of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in? We have seen him, the Lord of creation, enter his own creation and be born a baby, become subject to the laws of nature and the laws of God. And we have seen him, the ruler and the judge, who reduces judges to nothing, who makes the judges of the earth meaningless. We have seen the judge of the judges become judged and condemned for guilty people. For we who are exhausted and who fail and who have no defense for our failings and who desperately need someone to defend us, a defender. We've seen it. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary. He kept the law for me. You know, I can sometimes keep the law, like in white knuckle, forcing myself to do what I'm supposed to do. But in Jesus Christ, God became the lawgiver and then the law keeper. And he kept all the law for me, not in a white knuckle struggle, but in a kind of dance. And he did that for me. He gives strength to the weary. And to him who lacks might, he increases power. And in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, all flesh will see it together because it happened right on the international stage. God has revealed mercy to a world desperately in need of mercy. And the great so what of this whole thing is, those who wait upon the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not faint. So what does it mean to wait on the Lord? Is it a kind of, some phrases that we really love here in South Florida? Chill out? Does it just mean to chill out? Does it mean to kind of get under your covers and pull the covers over your head and just put your fingers in your ears? Does it mean to live in a kind of religious, spiritual, mindless absurdity where I don't see anything, I just pretend everything's going to be okay? Is that what it means? To live in denial of the pain? Well, the first thing we do in this way of waiting is that we actually employ the logic of hope that Isaiah is dropping on us. We use creation. And I mean this very literally. You just literally walk outside. That's all you do. You walk outside and you say to yourself, could all of this be an accident? Again, when your head is in your hands and you're saying, I don't know if I can go on. I'm so exhausted. I have no strength. I can't make it any further. I think life is meaningless. I think life is without purpose. Go out and look at creation and ask yourself, is creation purposeless, meaningless, without order? No. There has to be an omnipotent creator. How did order come out of disorder? Unless there was one to order it. And in order to reveal himself, to reveal his darling attribute, the thing he most admires about himself, in order to reveal mercy to this fallen planet, he chose a people, the people of Abraham. And out of that people came the promised seed of Abraham, Jesus Christ, who loved me and gave himself for me. And I preach that to my doubt. You know, we say it a lot in our circles. Preach the gospel to yourself. You've perhaps heard that in a church like this or one like it. Preach the gospel to yourself. Well, let me drop a hint on you. because I preach for a living. And every time I get up here, I'm thinking, how can I persuade them? There's always a persuasive element to preaching. And I'm talking about preaching to yourself, persuading yourself. You know, the word wait in Hebrew can also be translated gathered. And it's what we do. It's kind of a new sounding word, but we center ourselves. We gather ourselves before God, and we gather our thoughts of the Creator and the Redeemer. And as we preach that to ourselves, hope begins to grow. Now, I'm not talking about doing something irrational. I'm not talking about, see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil. I'm not talking about just closing your eyes and pretending like all the bad people are gone and all the bad things will just go away. I'm not talking about irrationality or checking your mind at the door. It's just the opposite. It's about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Tracing the truth to its logical conclusions in a way that persuades ourselves that God can be trusted, even when all around my soul gives way. And we see that at the end of this logic of hope, a new world is coming. And we agree with the old Russian writer who said this. I'm going to read the whole paragraph to you. I believe like a child that suffering will be healed and made up for, that all the humiliating absurdity of human contradictions will vanish like a pitiful mirage, like the despicable fabrication of the impotent and infinitely small Euclidean mind of man, that in the world's finale, at the moment of eternal harmony, something so precious will come to pass that it will suffice for all hearts, for the comforting of all resentments, for the atonement of all the crimes of humanity, for all the blood that they've shed, that it will make it not only possible to forgive, but to justify all that has happened. We live in the penultimate world, the second to the last world, but the ultimate world is on the way. What does waiting look like in this world? Well, it looks a lot like what happened to the Virgin Mary. She was approached by the angel Gabriel. She could have taken the way of fight or the way of flight. Had she taken the way of flight, she would have said, look, Gabriel, I'm only 16 years old. You got the wrong girl here. I'm not going to do it. Or had she taken the way of fight, the way of activism, she might have said, oh, I'm going to bear the Messiah? Okay, Gabriel, sir, I'll get right to work on it right now. Messiah, Messiah, Messiah. Of course, that's not what she did. She didn't take the escapist route, nor did she take the activist route. She said, be it done unto me, the handmaiden of the Lord, as you have said. It's what Francis Schaeffer called active passivity. It's what the book of Hebrews chapter 4 calls being diligent to rest, forcing yourself to not force yourself, forcing yourself to rest, to wait. It's another way of describing belief. That's what waiting on the Lord looks like. And when in the calm before the storm, when in the course of everyday life, when we are really believing the gospel like we all or most of us claim to believe, when we are stocking up the shelves of our soul with the gospel, then those who wait in that way on the Lord will gain new strength. They will run. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and not faint. I don't mean to be triumphalistic. I'm not trying to say, oh, Christians can be much stronger than the average person. I'm just saying it's not smug. It's not triumphalistic. The pain still hurts. We still lose people. There's still the open seat at the Thanksgiving table. We still find ourselves with our head in our hands. We do mourn, but not like the rest who have no hope. You know, the word patience is related to the Latin word for suffering, passion. And patience is a kind of suffering. But in the midst of it, we get to know more and more that we are loved by the everlasting God, and He will beautify us like we've never imagined. And even when we find ourselves under the pier, clearly, and the storm is surging, Strength is rising, and grace is on the way. Let's pray together. Father, we ask that this week we would preach the gospel to ourselves at every opportunity, that we would wake up in the morning saying, Abba, I belong to you because of Jesus Christ. And that tone would ring through our entire day. Lord, make us actively passive as we deliberately depend not on our own activism and not in our mechanisms for escape, but that we consciously, intentionally, deliberately cast ourselves upon what Jesus Christ has done in his life, death, and resurrection. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.